Tonight on the Game On podcast, Adelaide didn't get the scout they wanted. What will need to change? And Port Adelaide's season goes from bad to worse. How will it end? Or how does it end? And we farewell another great player of the AFL, and we celebrate another legend as well. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete. Once again, Malcolm is joining me here in the studio. Malcolm, how's your week been?
Yeah, reasonably quiet. Couple of guest speaking spots.
Yes.
But yeah, reasonably.
Selling a few books?
Yeah, went okay. Down at, I'll tell you what I will give, the Marion Community Centre.
Yep.
A meal there Monday night was very good. And geez, there were some people there.
Yes.
Big numbers, yeah. So
maybe you need to start moving a little bit more South Adelaide.
No, it was just people there. They just do a really good job, I think.
Yep.
So
absolutely fantastic. Footy highlights from the weekend, mate, just quickly.
I didn't mind the Hawthorn West Gold Coast game, but there were a few umpiring things which angered me as well. We'll
talk about that one in a minute. All right, mate. Let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, mate, coming up a little bit later, as per usual, we're going to talk soccer, we're going to talk netball, we're going to talk some SANFL, especially with the state game happening at the moment. But let's kick off with the AFL first. We might start off with mental health and its impact. Can't really be ignored by the AFL any longer, mate. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's being ignored. Like they do a lot of things around with courses and things which are offered and all that.
Yep.
I think there's players, once they're no longer in the limelight, struggle to adapt back to normal life. Yep. Maybe there's a bit more they could do there, but I don't think there's an easy fix for anyone. Yep. It's a subject very close to my bone.
And this is why I bring it up first,
I admit I've only got one male member of my wedding party left, and it's another guy from Adelaide Uni did it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't think there's an easy fixer. I don't think there's any just a button you can go, right, we'll do this and that'll fix it. Yep.
So we regard the Selwood family as probably footballing royalty as much as anybody, and our condolences go to the Selwood family, obviously, for this tragedy. But, you know, two family members within the space of, 6-7 months, it's just it's a sad situation. And
it's like just enormously sad, and so many things there that, just as we were talking about off air before, you post a few days ago looking forward to the run honouring my brother, and then was it beforehand? And
it's a tough situation for all involved, that's for sure. I hope the AFL are looking at it quite seriously, which I think they are. It's just which levers to pull, and at the moment they've got some big agenda items on their plate. So this one doesn't get resolved easily, does it?
We had Nick Loudon with Nord as well, so it's as I said, it's a subject very close to the bone.
Yep. Condolences, obviously, to those families. All right, mate, let's move on. Let's talk Adelaide. They set themselves for this game. Still have some learning to do before making their charge to finals. Where can they improve?
Well, let's go back to the start of the game.
Yep.
Now, I would have thought it's not exactly rocket science that you don't allow Dan Houston to be standing by himself. So he gets the short chip across and has the first shot for goal with no one within, cooey of him. It's just staggering.
Yep.
Same thing.
Well, they saw enough of him at Port Adelaide to know.
It's ridiculous, but I don't get where modern football's gone, where half-back flankers are being allowed to run around like unregistered dogs. Yep. Like Rioli and Noble for Gold Coast. Noble and Dale for Western Bulldogs, 49 touches. It's
Wanganeen Malira's been doing the same.
Stand a player.
Yep.
And I could see we've got about the three talls for Adelaide, but where in the hell's the half-all flankers working their ass off? Ben Keys in that weather, 0 tackles.
Yep.
Now that is damning. So Rochelle, Neil Bullen, and Keys 6 tackles between them.
Yep.
Now, that's where you need those guys doing far more defensively than that.
So Adelaide's offense, but defense of that offense is where it could be tweaked a little bit?
Yeah, as I said, Keys had previously done a good job, especially on the Carlton halfback flanker, the left footer to Carlton from Essendon.
That's right. We'll think about that one in a minute. But
just he's done that.
Yeah, that
things.
role.
I don't understand why they're not using him far more defensively. Josh Dacos killed him more than Houston in this occasion.
Yep.
I just don't get it. Like, we carry on about tagging. No, Oliver didn't tag Neil whatsoever. He just stood him at a bounce, actually.
Yep.
Made him at least cut him back a little bit on clearances. But why now aren't we actually picking up defenders?
Yes.
I just don't get it.
Totally agree with you there. It's obviously a bugbear, but no, I totally agree that Adelaide need to tighten up in some areas. They are one of those teams that we did talk about a few weeks ago where they the split screen, where they go by foot, they seem to be really, really clean. They go by hand, it's sort of a little bit more shaky, I suppose is the best part. But as far as their overall sort of seeding and ranking, it's around the 9th and 10th mark if you combine both of those figures. Yeah. So does that mean that they're not peaking too much at the moment, or is there still a bit of work to do?
I think that's about their level still. I still think it'll be out of them and Fremantle for the last spot.
Okay.
I've thought that.
Yep.
Still. I always have still thought Adelaide was still going to be just around.
Would you favour Fremantle over Adelaide at the moment?
Oh, I think it's line ball. All right, I reckon Fremantle's effectively got a bye this weekend. Mm-hmm. So hopefully Adelaide actually treat West Coast with a bit of respect and do the same thing.
We'll talk about that one a little bit later as we go along. Was Adelaide's 3 tall forwards a big mistake in the selection?
You certainly make a case with the weather which was coming and that.
I saw Walker. I was privileged to go to the Carlton Adelaide game, and I sort of said to you, and I think I even mentioned it on air, looked a little bit cooked, but his forward craft was very handy for the other 2 forwards. I then got to see, we saw him at the showdown, and my comment again was he looks cooked. Being subbed off doesn't help, does it?
I think I'm pretty sure he won't play this weekend. But even go back to the showdown, but we both thought the same thing watching. He wasn't, but he at least still had Adelaide most number of tackles. So there's something that a 35-year-old shouldn't be making the most amount of tackles.
Yep.
So, that's well done by Tex, but I still think there's some question marks overall on some players there.
That forward half defence, I think, is exactly where it's pinpointed to.
But, that's where they're saying, you can't, the 3 talls, they're running it out so easy. I actually don't think it's quite so much those 3. I think it's the other smaller ones aren't working hard enough. And I want to see, Rochelle and Keys especially have got to be more physical in that regard.
Yep. I think they pick and choose a little bit when they want to, and I think that's something they've got to get out of their game. I totally agree. Do you think Adelaide changed the angles enough over the weekend? Is it a case of Collingwood are so well set up that it didn't allow them to do that?
Yeah, maybe, but
because that's their one.
But Rankin kicks 2 out in the full. Rochelle does, and Fogarty missed a goal as well. If you kick one of those to get it back under a goal, who knows? Yep. So look, and then we dissect sports so much now because there's so many write-ups of games, podcasts, etc. Yep. But it still comes down to just kick the bloody ball between those big white posts more.
Are you impressed with Fogarty's continued improvement? I won't say spiked, but he's continually just taking those little steps now to assert himself.
Yeah, but he could have taken that bit more on the weekend.
Yeah.
So he was good, but he could have been better.
Were you disappointed that Frampton got a hold of Thilthorpe?
I didn't think he'd get a hold of him.
Well, but he kept him to next to nothing.
Still took marks, and at one stage too, Frampton was on Fogarty at one stage. They all swap around. I think it was probably more that Howe killed them, and they didn't block enough to prevent there. And I just thought, again,
was it a big opportunity lost?
Yeah, massively. Yep. But I think Collingwood are the best side structurally. Yep. I think their coaching panel, what they've done structurally with that side is just so much it's incredible. Why is it so much better?
Are you talking because of their age and also the profile of some of their players? They're lesser-known players?
Yeah, but just going, being at the Collingwood-Sydney game here as a neutral and sitting with Adrian Howard from uni, and we were just looking at their structure and just going, how well are they? Do they set up where the opposition then can't score? And Lipinski was the guy who really impressed me in that regard that night. I just think they dot the I's, cross the T's better than any other side.
Yep, totally agree. I did mention just a second ago there that it didn't allow Adelaide to get their sort of angled or 45 kicks, those little ones. Is that a learning experience that Adelaide go back to, not the drawing board? Because I heard someone say, it's back to the drawing board for Adelaide. I don't think it is back to the drawing board for Adelaide. I think it's a case of you learn what your opposition does well against you and then plan better for it next time.
Yeah, also, but it doesn't help.
But they've lost 10 in a row.
It doesn't help that it doesn't help the lack of equality in games at the MCG.
Yep.
If you're playing more games at the MCG, I think it does make it easier to adapt to that. I think West Coast were brilliant, Western Australia, where they built their oval to the exact same dimensions as the G.
Yep.
I wish Adelaide Oval was, because I reckon that's what would help.
Difference.
You
They had the chance. They ripped down most of it. They could have just encroached a little bit
not
further.
Sure on that. Yeah. You can imagine there would have been some cricket by play there.
Yep. Underground car parking and council wouldn't have allowed too much to encroach on the on the parklands. That'd be just way too much, mate.
You can't have common sense.
No. We'll talk about that in a minute. Crows, question without notice: is someone like Luke Pedlar maybe a target for someone like Collingwood?
I think a lot of clubs would be looking at him at the moment, going, "Hang on, why is he not an Adelaide side?" And he can play. Yep. So I think he's the guy that other sides would be looking at the most.
Yep. Does that affect then Adelaide's depth moving forward? Say in the next, let's just say the next 2 or 3 years.
You just don't know. I think Adelaide are missing Matt Crouch more than they.
Really?
Especially a game on the weekend where it became wet.
Yep.
So just that inside, in and under to get it and give it.
Yep.
And, he doesn't create the yardage too much, but he gives it then to be carried to a Rankin, etc.
I think Adelaide are missing Brodie Smith. That low, quick pass, either on the 45 or down the line, catches a lot of people out.
I think there's still a case for him to be in the side at the moment.
Yeah. And that's why I bring it up. So you think Crouch, and to be honest with you, Crouch has been the forgotten man in the last 3 or 4 weeks, hasn't he? Because he hasn't obviously played.
Someone who's not playing, but for mine, I just think in midfield, and Saligo hasn't gone on.
Because of Crouch?
No, you just don't know, but they need more from him as well.
Do you think Saligo's last year was more positive because he got more of that number one role in the midfield, whereas Rankin's come in?
Yeah, he's still getting plenty of midfield minutes, so it's not that. I just think he's just a bit out of form, not finding the ball as much.
Yeah, that happens from time to time. The other one is Dan Curtin. Do Adelaide use him as potential draft capital, or do they see him taking, say, the Walker role long term?
I think he's so flexible. I still don't think they know where he's going to end up playing. I think they recognise his ability, but they're not sure what to do.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing for
Adelaide? I think it's a good thing. I just think they've just got to work things out a bit more with him.
Personally, I wouldn't be giving him up. I think he's a quality player, and players like that don't come along. And if you're trying to get draft picks in, it makes it hard because then you've got to almost start again. So anyway, all right, let's last one on Adelaide there. Was umpiring decision that cost Adelaide with delivery and ball movement. We saw a throw that wasn't a throw. Couple of decisions.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, I don't think it was as much as a couple of games in the past where you could have said more. Yeah. So
fair
I think they just missed the goals.
Yep. No, that's you got to kick in between the two big uprights, like you said. All right, let's move on to Port Adelaide. Where has it all gone wrong? Pinpoint the moment has gone so horribly wrong for Port Adelaide, in your opinion, mate.
I don't think it's a moment so much, but it's a hugely damning stat that in the 3 games against Collingwood, Western Bulldogs, and now Geelong, where they've been beaten, convincingly, it's 36 goals to 6 after half time in those games. Port hasn't won a last quarter all year. No. Even the game against Adelaide, Adelaide still outscored them in the last quarter, despite the fact
insane.
Port Adelaide had 21 inside 50s. Yep. So yeah, that's a question mark as well. I left Uni Oval and went to the Aqaba to watch the Port, and it was close when I left. Like it was only 8 points of difference at half time.
Yes,
and just sitting there watching out with a couple other guys and that. And I'm just thinking, yes, they've lost Horn Francis, so he's one of the three.
Yes.
But Geelong had lost Dangerfield.
Yep.
And Bowes, and so it was interesting. But it was the lack of fight, just the lack of.
And that's not Port Adelaide, is it?
Yeah, I think we go. That's not Port Adelaide, but it's more that was Port in the SANFL.
No, but Port Adelaide under Hinkley
has been competitive. I know. They always have been. I think they've overachieved in Hinkley.
Yeah,
I've said that time and time again.
I totally agree with you.
But at the moment, it was just, and at home.
Yes, that's the other disappointing part, isn't it?
And just put the white flag up at home.
Yep.
And it was pretty average, and geez, it could get very ugly over in Perth this weekend.
Mate, one of our loyal listeners, Wayne Stremple, has written in.
G'day, Big Carl. Yep. G'day, Normie.
He's written in saying, so the question must be asked, and we must throw it out there right now, is how long and how strong is the wick on the Ken Hinkley coaching time bomb?
I don't know. I do think he will go before the end of the year. I still think they'll go a few more weeks. But if you were Carr at the moment with the injuries Port have got and where they're at and all that, geez, I wouldn't want it at the moment.
Yep.
So I don't actually think out of that. Let's just think there.
Is that Port Adelaide trying to save face a little bit?
Maybe, but I think we've spoken about their list falls away. And while Marshall and Lukosius are both injured, Marshall, Lukosius and Georgiadis are all pretty similar.
Yep.
I'm not sure they're balanced, even if those three were playing. Yes, they'd be better.
Yes.
But I'm still not convinced. There's not a go-to man out of that three and the other two
that
to
you
run
could rely on, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be rotating them. And so I'm just not convinced. Yes, Charlie Dixon probably went too long, and they probably went to him too much.
Yes.
But I'm still not sure the mix now is going to be
any better.
Much better, yeah.
Mate, I have to pull up these rival recruits, and this is where I'm sort of asking about pinpointing, but rival recruits since 2018. Sam Mays, Ryan Burton.
Yeah, Ryan's been serviceable without... Unfortunately, look, what he did to his leg as a kid.
Yes.
Because he is the best junior I've watched.
Yep.
Philippo's the best junior I've umpired.
Yep.
And Aaron Fiora was the other one.
Yes.
Where Burton was unbelievable. Yep. And while I think he's still been serviceable,
yes,
he doesn't quite move like he did when he was a kid. And they said his was the equivalent of, nearly 100K car crash what he did to his leg.
That's unbelievable. Sam Mays obviously in there. In 2019 they had none. In 2020 they recruited Alia and Orazio Fantasia. Would you say the Alia experiment has worked?
Yeah, you've got to give that a tick because I don't think they paid up a huge amount to Sydney for him. Unfortunately, Razzle Dazzle's body just hasn't held up.
No, and
he's remarkably got so many opportunities, really.
He does indeed.
Yeah.
2021, Jeremy Finlayson.
Serviceable. And look, we can't imagine what he goes through all the time. Look, it's I'm trying to think, probably about a year or so ago now, not that, just around the corner from here, from your place, Pete, that I went to a talk to hear Rick Sarr. Financial bit of footy, and I'd rang Rick and said I'll come, and that'd be good rule book. That means I'll get some questions, and that right. And I stayed, the next speakers, and it happened to be Kelly Phillipson.
Yes,
and I certainly left with wet eyes. So did everyone else.
Yep.
So I went to her book launch last week.
Yes,
and I bought the book, and I finished it within a day and a bit, and it's just incomprehensible, and people question his his lack of consistency. Well, I reckon he's got a bloody good reason compared to anyone else.
When real life throws you a yo-yo and it's up and down like that, you can understand. So, yes, sort of a little bit of a hit there, but obviously other things that are working through it. 2022, they got the Jason Horne-Francis deal done and Willie Rioli. So I'm just going through these names because I'm pinpointing that they've tried to bite one off now and it's failed dismally.
Yeah, I even Kane Corns has said they're in for 5 years of pain.
Yep.
Yep. It's not like Kane actually is, if he's saying that, it's pretty bloody obvious.
Yeah, absolutely right. So that was probably a win there, obviously, for the Horne-Francis and the Willie Rioli deal, I think was probably a win. This is the one for me where I think that it's all sort of fallen apart. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, Jordan Sweet, Sava Ralegalia and Ivan Soldo, all in the 1 year in 2023. So they have gone all in thinking that this is going to work by 24, 25. And realistically, they were close last year, but losing finals at home.
So interesting they went so much for 2 ruckmen too. So it's almost, and certainly big question marks on both of them. Soldo's certainly a bomb.
Yep. It
looks like. Sweet, not quite. He's played some reasonable games and
just needs some consistency.
Yeah, so I'm not quite so much, but I think they thought they were contending and they're not.
But these are the players that they thought they were contending with. And
I agree.
This is where I'm pinpointing going, it's not working.
I never quite got the throwing all the eggs at Thatcher either because his consistency was never
a strong point.
His strong point. And it showed at Port.
Yep.
Very good against Hawthorn.
Yep.
And then he was shithouse against Sydney in the next week. And that's been his career.
Yep.
So.
And then 2024, Jack Lukosius, Joe Richards and Rory Atkinson. Well, Jack Lukosius.
Yeah, Rory Atkins, I think they recruited him more for the SANFL side, which I think's a bit ridiculous.
But I heard Ken talking about it today that he might be playing him.
Oh, I think he will play this week.
Yep.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Yeah, I thought that was a bizarre recruit.
Yep.
I just didn't get that.
I mean, if he wanted to come back to Adelaide, he could have done just as well at an SANFL club rather than at Port Adelaide. But
yeah, not that amount of money. Good on him that he managed to get another year's AFL money.
We've all talked about that. And then the players that have left since 2018, we're talking about Jack Homch, Chad Wingard, Jasper Pittard and Jared Polak. At the time, they were some reasonable players.
But they managed to get Rosie out of the Wingard bit. So I think they're still well in front.
Yep.
And Homch should have been okay, but I think his body had caught up a bit there. So I still give him a tick there overall.
And then 2019, Dougal Harrod, Paddy Ryder and Billy Frampton.
I think Paddy Ryder was a bigger loss than they probably realised.
Yep.
But I think at the moment, as we talk about consistently, and everyone does, it's the big three.
Yep.
Then say a fall off to Bergman and a couple, but then a big fall off.
Yep.
And
so now with these injuries, and we did talk about this a little bit last week, is it time to reset the agenda moving forward?
Well, they're not going to play finals this year.
No.
I think they'll keep trying to have a look at their list and evaluate there.
Yep.
Look, rap for Logan Evans that he's got offered, apparently signed onto a
3-year deal.
Yeah. He hasn't set the world on fire this year, so
no, but last year was pretty good.
Yeah, he did. No, Logan showed a fair bit last year, and good luck to him. Rap for Logan.
And remember, he's a mid-season recruit, and most mid-season recruits don't get offered that extra deal. So
no, good on it. But again, it surprised me that got offered.
Yep.
So
could that be part of Josh Carr's vision moving forward if he has signed him?
Oh, I would say so.
You
would think a deal like that's got to be mainly Carr's call. You would think.
Yep, so he likes what he sees. He just needs to work with him a little bit.
So.
The Butters Bergman rumours aren't going away anywhere soon or anytime soon. What would you do?
Depends what you're offered for them, but even if you get 2 draft choice, say you get 2 top 10 choices for Butters, well, he's a top 10 player himself at the moment. It doesn't mean you're going to get a top 10 player in return.
That's right.
Yes, it's a top 10 draft choice.
That's right.
But, so, look, I think they'll still try and keep both of them.
Yep.
But, we just got to wait and see.
Do Port Adelaide absolutely all out, no holds barred, have to sign these 2 players to stay competitive, or is it time to, like Kane Corns has said, and you mentioned earlier there, pain for the next 5 years?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Good luck. You know, the Tarps will be back.
Wow.
You know.
That's a big call.
They showed it at Footy Park. As soon as Port fell away, their supporters drop off very quickly.
Yep.
So, you know, because a lot of them are still in the SANFL mindset. Still don't get it. That, hang on, you're the big fish. You're the small fish in the big sea now compared to the other way around.
Yep.
And to Port's credit, they won premierships on a lot of time on bluff.
Yes.
They didn't have the best side, and that's even more so to their credit.
Yep.
And, you know, as Timmy G said, you know, John Cale had somehow convinced you were a better player than John Platten. You knew it was bullshit, but he was the master salesman.
Hey, confidence in somebody makes a big, big difference. Have they gone a bit early on Josh Carr?
Possibly, but
knowing what potentially could be out in the market?
Yeah, maybe, but you know, they've decided he's the one, so good luck to him. Look,
does it have shades?
And as Craig Burton spoke very highly of him, even when they finished bottom, he said
this is why
how good he was. So,
does this have shades of North Adelaide about it?
Yeah, maybe.
Almost starting from ground zero.
But again, it's probably a harder one to start from. I still have nightmares about 18, which we shouldn't bring that up.
No, I don't want you rolled up in the fetal position, rocking for the next hour. I'm at a loss with Port Adelaide. Let's move on to some AFL sort of hot topics, mate. If there's 5 teams that you really, really look to go ahead over the next 5 years, who'd be the 5 that you'd pick? Question without notice.
Western Bulldogs.
Okay.
Number 1.
Really?
Hawthorn.
Yep.
I still like Brisbane. I still think Brisbane's in for a fair, while.
Yes.
After that, I think it then becomes more lottery.
Mate, you've forgotten one that I know you're going to kick yourself when you hear me call out my top 5. I've got /6, but I've got Gold Coast at 1.
Yeah, Gold Coast are the other one, especially with also some more academy choices to come. So, yeah, that's true. They're the other one. Yep.
They're my number 1 seed. I've got Hawthorn, Sydney, Brisbane, and then I've got Collingwood /Adelaide. Yeah,
Collingwood's age worries me.
That's why I've got them /Adelaide.
I'm still not sure of Sydney depth-wise. Yep. And the same thing with Adelaide. So I'm more a 4.
Yep, 4 or 5. Or 4 to 6 for me. Yeah. And I've got certainly Sydney, Adelaide and Collingwood in that list. What about the tough 5 years ahead, mate? Your top 5 seeds there.
I think Richmond, Port Adelaide. Yep. Still not convinced on St Kilda, but I still do like some of their youth, but I think there's still a bit of gap there.
Yep.
West Coast, I think, is still probably the number 1 there. Yep. I think they're still going to be down for a fair while.
Yep.
I think they're more. North Melbourne should improve, but geez, I'm still not sure they actually know how to win. Yep.
Which is very unusual for Alistair Clarkson being.
Yeah, but it's that
sometimes an angry ant.
You know, that game could have gone either way last weekend, and so there. And to Richmond's credit, I thought Richmond would come convincingly bottom this year. Yep. I thought Richmond were a big chance not to win a game. Yep. So I think they're a mile ahead there. Yep. So that's a big tick to Richmond.
I actually haven't got them in my top 5 at all.
But I just think I still don't get it. I think part of it, I'm not sure if Uze's trying to sell it's us against the world. The crap rebolter, I still just don't get. And he even still said it again this week. Fuck's sake, shut up.
Yep.
Don't mention him. Yep. Ask about him. Just
next
ignore
question.
it. You know?
Yep.
He said, disappointing we haven't got him. No, it's not. You know, I just don't get why he's still saying that. I get quite angry at that. I just don't think he thinks with it. And don't dare think that there wouldn't be Richmond senior parents or players thinking that as well. Yep. And, you know, I still think there'll be some ramifications over their attitude with it.
Yep.
But, I just don't get that there.
It'll come to pass. There's no doubt about that. My top 5 there is West Coast at number 1 seed, Port Adelaide, St Kilda, and this pains me to say Carlton and GWS are probably the the 5 there that I think are in for a little bit of pain. And
Yeah,
I certainly say Carlton on the point of view of they've had all this talent for a long, long time, and everyone's getting a little bit older. They haven't really developed that next group. And same with GWS. They're still relying on their 3 or 4 superstars, and after that it really drops off. So for me, there's a world of pain.
Doesn't seem to be much, after Cripps, Curnow.
Yep. Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh, his body's probably catching up with him a bit.
Banged up for a young man. That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah. All right, let's move on. The Adelaide Western Bulldogs game has been moved from Mars Stadium to Marvel, mate. You messaged me as soon as you heard it. Oh, my God, the AFL has finally found some common sense.
Probably about the only common sense decision they've made. I had to laugh. So that they carried on that the AFL management have had a meeting with Brad Scott, Chris Scott,
Simon Goodwin.
Yeah, Goody. There's one other.
Yep.
Clarkson.
Yep.
They could have walked out of there and gone, right, we're going back to 3 umpires.
Yes.
We're getting rid of the sub rule. Hello. There's 2 just things that strike of the pen of just common sense within 30 seconds.
Yep.
And you would have get it. They need some big ticks at the moment, the AFL.
Yep.
Like they're going as well as Port Adelaide in last week in the last quarter.
Yep.
They could have done that this week, and that would have got ticked just from everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, everyone would have been pretty happy with it. Mate, question without notice. The salary cap for coaches, do you think that the head coach should be outside of the soft cap? Or does it open it up to...
I think it opens up a bit too much. I think they can raise the soft cap again, but... Yeah, no, I still I do like the Australian model there compared to, especially the English soccer. I know that's my other
your other passion. Yep.
Yeah, and before the start of the year, there's 5 or 6 clubs, really probably 3 you can win it.
Yep.
And then down the bottom, it's boring now. It was actually a terrible year in the Premier League. The only thing which became interesting was the last battle for the Champions League spot, where Liverpool effectively won the title really 2 to 3 months ago.
Yes.
And the 3 sides which went down, everyone knew there's a 13-point gap till the next side above.
Yes.
Like United and Tottenham were both terrible, but they still finished a mile above relegation.
Yes.
So it's shithouse, that system. So I'm glad we haven't got that system. I still think Leicester winning the Premier League that year is still arguably up there with any sporting accomplishment.
I agree. And they had to do it with minimum chips basically on the table, which is impressive. Does that then lead on to the conversation about 1 or 2 players or marquee players being outside the overall salary cap?
No, I don't like that either.
You don't like that either?
No.
No marquee players?
No, I reckon that still opens it up to the rich get richer side of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever's got the biggest sponsor.
Yeah. I think it's compromised enough as it is with, good luck trying to get a sponsorship. You to sign a sponsor compared to, say, Collingwood or Richmond, which has got the big games at the G, always on telly. I think they said North Melbourne had been actually only televised game. It's something like 12 times in the last 5 years.
Yep.
So, geez, you're starting a mile back there as it is.
Yep.
So people carry on, it's unfair the rich clubs then put in money. Bullshit, it's not. That's actually should be there because of the other inequality.
That's right.
Through it.
Yeah, the equalisation moment. Mate, you've brought up a very, very good point here, and I've got it written down on my notes. Would Tasmania and North Melbourne be the right merger? You talked last week about the Northern Kangaroos, obviously.
Yeah, that should have happened.
Do you think, considering North Melbourne already play games in Tasmania and they're selling games to Western Australia?
Oh, yeah, they should be. It's ridiculous that there's still a team in Melbourne. There should be less teams in Melbourne.
Yep.
It's still a VFL. It's a VFL competition with some teams added.
Yes.
It's not a national competition, and I hate that.
Would the system work, and this is where I sort of think about it from left field a little bit, where obviously they play their 8 to 10 games down in Tasmania as their home games, and they play their 8 to 10 games in Melbourne as the Tasmanian North Melbourne, whatever you want to call it. But they are their home games to give them that extra cash flow that obviously helps when it comes to building the stadium and
Yeah, but
making
it just should be that way.
financially viable.
It should be that way anyway. That should have happened. It's ridiculous that we're starting another team.
Yep.
There's not the talent.
Yep.
Like, how many games at the moment do we go, we sort of switch off, you know?
Well, I sort of did with the St Kilda and West Coast
It
game
was
and
Richmond,
also the North
Melbourne
Melbourne.
a couple of weeks, a few weeks ago. We're just shithouse football, and it's going, there's just too many teams.
Yep.
You know?
So maybe potential merger. Maybe we'll get a bit of homework next week. Talk about a couple of potential mergers that would make the competition better.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it just won't happen at the moment while they're being, you know, the competition's bankrolling them as it is.
Yep.
You know?
It's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. All right. Emerging markets, mate. India, New Zealand, England, the USA. Could we have games played in these countries, say, within the next 20, 25 years?
Oh, definitely. You know, so whatever, you know, with Port Adelaide, to Port's credit, that game in China was making a profit. Now, that's incredible. In that shorter time they had it. In 3 years, they were making a profit. And the sponsorship they'll get dragging in, I'll bag Port Adelaide at the end. But what KT did there was incredible.
Yep.
You know.
And we've got KD Part 1 coming up later in our past players, past legends. So perfectly segued there, mate. I love it.
Without even realising.
Even realising. Rules. Should the kicking be increased from 15 metres to 20 metres to avoid congestion and to keep the ball moving? Or does it create a little bit more of that stop-start football?
I just think if you kick backwards. So that way you kick backwards in your defensive 50, play on.
Yep.
And that way there's not the argument is at 15 because you've got some umpires at the moment calling kicks 25, not 15. It's crazy.
Yep.
A goal scorer is 9.6.
Yes.
So it's not hard for mine. I never struggle with that at umpire. I'd say at the moment, at AFL level, there's no reason why they can't mow the oval in 15-metre strips.
I heard Nathan Buckley, I think it was Nathan Buckley, mention that, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. We put no more lines on the ground, but the ground staff can do it.
They can do it.
Yep.
So just do it.
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's rattle off some quick-fire questions. Luke Beveridge, signing him or not signing him just yet?
Oh, I think that might happen in the bye weekend.
Yep.
So I think it will happen.
Absolutely. The 20th team, do you think it'll be Northern Territory or will it be out of, say, Western Australia?
I think it'll be Northern Territory, but I'm not sure it'll only be Northern Territory.
Could it be a merger style?
I think it might be. I still think there's a possibility of another club, Northern Territory.
Right. Okay. I think we're on the same wavelength with that, but we'll talk about that one a little bit more later.
Possibility.
Yep. Makes sense, doesn't it? Who would you say is the best 5 kicks going into 50 in the AFL?
I like Wanganeen Malira.
Yep. He's on the list.
I still think Houston's up there.
Nope.
Yeah, it's probably not something I've thought about.
No, that's all right. Isaac Heaney?
Yeah. Funny, last week it wasn't his strength.
Well, 5 possessions to quarter time and then nothing but class after that. Zach Merritt, Jason Horne-Francis, Isaac Rankin and Wanganeen Malira.
Yeah, it was funny. Merritt probably had more errors in that regard in the first quarter last week than he's had for the whole year.
Yeah, which is crazy. All right, mate, let's quickly run through last week's game. Seems like a long time ago. Gold Coast getting over Hawthorn. Gold Coast are coming.
Yeah, they are.
Will they play finals?
Yes, they will.
Yep.
It was a good game, but 2 of the first 3 goals, unwarranted free kicks, and the one to Long where the umpire blew the whistle, both teams. And they showed it from about 5 different angles, and you still couldn't see a free kick. For fuck's sake, leave it alone.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh.
Sydney getting up over Carlton by 16. I think that's probably
yet another game Carlton in front at
this
half
is what
time.
I'm going to say. Another opportunity gone by. We did obviously talk about the Adelaide Collingwood game. We talked about the Port Adelaide Cats game. The big one for me was Fremantle getting up over GWS on their home deck by 34 points, and that probably just reinforces what you're talking about with Freo coming.
Yeah, a little bit. It's also an interesting thing where it said, if it's a shootout, GWS fine, but if you manage to bottle it up, they don't seem to be able to cope with that. And now Callahan's got injured.
Makes it just that little bit
harder.
harder.
I think their midfield falls away a bit. So, yeah, I think they're they're an interesting side to watch.
Isn't it interesting that GWS and Port Adelaide were the two teams that were steadfast in almost everybody's picks for top four, and yet they're probably two teams that are going to struggle for the remainder of the year.
GWS is still a maybe.
Yep.
But yeah.
The Western Bulldogs giving Essendon an absolute thumping. What do you do as an Essendon supporter?
Yeah. Yeah, you keep at it. Always keep your side.
Yep.
But yeah, I admit, I watched the first quarter and that was enough.
Western Bulldogs have gone to a whole new level, haven't they?
Yeah, no, quarter time, the siren went.
That was
there were
enough.
no other book sales there. I'd exhausted my market, so I left.
Fair enough. Richmond going down just to North Melbourne. Good to see two emerging sides going at it, but again, the quality isn't where it needs to be, is it?
No, it wasn't. I've only seen the highlights. I admit I'm watching a bit because of this podcast.
Yep.
You know, I'm fed up with the umpiring. The direction of it is so wrong.
Yep.
It's just incompetency personified.
The AFL have got some pretty big
so angry
KPIs to meet.
So angry at the moment.
There are a lot of people in the same boat.
Sort of dropped off a bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair
I'm
enough.
more watching highlights, so at least I've got enough on the sides and yeah.
Yep, fair call.
Yeah.
Melbourne getting up over Brisbane, a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah,
Melbourne are digging in, aren't they?
Was at the service to farewell John Griffin on Sunday, and it was at South Adelaide Footy Club.
Yep.
And I did say to Jeff Baines, you should lock everyone in. And Bainesy thought that was a good idea and said, this is probably going to be our record day's trade for this will probably be close to our best trading day because there's about 1,000 people.
Yep.
It was a big service down it. So, yeah, look, all the best to the Griffin family. Much loved. He was a leader, the life of the party, Griff. And, yeah, 74 going on 15 in a lot of ways, Griff. And, yeah, he was a ripper.
Yes, Melbourne getting up, obviously, over the Brisbane Lions, which was a bit of a surprise. And then the biggest one of them all was West Coast getting up over St Kilda. But really, West Coast kicking 108 points. They haven't done that for a while.
Yeah, for a long time. Yeah, they were reasonable, but St Kilda, yeah.
It's a bit of a worry anyway. Yeah. All right, mate, we better run through our tips for this week. Probably the game of the round. First up, Thursday night, Cats v the Bulldogs.
Yeah, no Dangerfield. I'm going to go I know it's at Cardinia Park or GMHBA.
There you go. Got it right.
I'm going to go for Western Bulldogs.
Bulldogs for me. Essendon v Richmond in the Dreamtime at the G.
Yeah, I'll still go Essendon.
Essendon for me, but I think Richmond will give it a fair old
Lynch
shake.
out as well, though, for Richmond.
Yeah, still give it a fair shake. Carlton v GWS at Marvel.
Quick deck. Probably favours GWS a bit. Toss a coin. If in doubt, I'll go the home side. I'll go Carlton.
For me as well. Hawthorn v Brisbane. Probably the other big game of the
year.
year.
Brisbane disappointing the last couple of weeks. Hawthorn have won the last 5 against the Lions. I'll go the Hawthorn in Melbourne.
Hawthorn for me. North Melbourne v Collingwood.
Collingwood. Although North Melbourne last year against them were up
42 points.
Yeah, they played some exhilarating footy that day.
Yep.
And then the comeback by Collingwood was incredible. They had a few things, a bit of luck went Collingwood's way that game, and truly. Collingwood
will be on point this time. I think it'll be a good game for about the first 5 or 6 minutes, and then I think Collingwood will put their stamp. They're being able to do their wins at the moment with some injuries along the way. Freo v Port Adelaide.
That beautiful number of 119 could be in question.
Ooh, big call. We probably had some Port Adelaide supporters just fall off their couch or drive into a tree at the moment hearing that, mate.
Could have a bit of fun.
Absolutely. Freo for me. Adelaide v West Coast Eagles.
Adelaide.
Adelaide for me. And Melbourne v Sydney.
Down there. And due to Sydney's lack of discipline, that they haven't got Melican, McInerney, and the forward who's got 3, belted a guy with 90 seconds. Marty. 90 seconds to go, and the game was over. It was brain dead.
Yep.
Geez, did Gerard Healy give him a bake? I happened to have the radio on at that stage, and he made me. He made me sound like Marcel Marseille.
And to finish us off, we've got Gold Coast v St Kilda.
I'll go.
It's at Marvel.
Yeah, I know it's at Marvel, but surely they can't. They stuffed up. They took Richmond lightly, and I think Hardwick will really hammer that this week, Gold Coast.
Do you think them playing 2 games up in the Northern Territory will play any part to it? Considering they look like sapping conditions.
Yeah, but then Western Bulldogs came back after 5 days off and hammered the Dogs.
That's
so,
true.
Yeah.
It is a fitness paradise at the moment, I suppose, for AFL players, that's for sure. Mate, we had better get off to a bit of a break, but what have we got coming up? Oh, hang on. We've got soccer. Ange Postecoglou will talk about the Spurs and Man U. The SANFL, unfortunately, SA goes down to WA in the state game. And the Thunderbirds, again, just falling short of their mark.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. All right, mate, we continue.
Thanks,
yeah, absolutely. Thanks to Gary KRIEVS there. All right, mate, we continue on with soccer. Man U playing Spurs in what
Europa League.
Yeah, the most invested game probably for Australia for a fair while, and it's probably because of the Ange Postecoglou link.
Part of that, but it's also just so vital because you get the Champions League spot. So it's actually worth millions of dollars this game.
Yep.
It's incredible the importance of it now. So, yeah, it's toss a coin either way.
Well, I was going to ask you a little bit later on, but let's do it now. Who wins and what's the score?
Oh, look, I'm going to go United 2-1.
Yep.
But honestly, it's just a guess. Unfortunately, it's about 4. My son's United. Yeah, he's not happy. As he said today, talking before we came here at home, and he's spot on. Like, it's ridiculous that this is a Thursday morning. He said it's not a midweek competition yet. The final.
Yep. It's been
on a Thursday morning, and he's ropeable because he's saying he can't get up and watch it because of work.
Yeah.
That the area he works on, he's got to be switched on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I just don't get.
But you think about major
Conference League is the level below.
Yep.
And yet that final's on the weekend. So it just makes it's weird, and it's not like it had to be programmed now because you're competing against still the games going in the Premier League and other competitions around the world. No, it's not. So it's just not. It's weird. Why it's not on the weekend?
Major sporting events, you would have thought that they'd be looking for maximum eyes and maximum viewers and maximum attendance, which the attendance is going to be no problem at all there.
As Daniel said, though, if Tottenham win, he said, Ange will be entertaining.
Yes, I can't wait. I'm going to go Spurs 1-0, and it's going to be a late goal. I think it'll be in the 84th minute. There you go. That's my my pick there anyway. But what are your thoughts on Ange's media treatment, with one reporter calling him a clown and another one saying he's one of the worst managers in Spurs history?
Yeah,
he's made a final.
Yeah, it's a bit over the top. It's all theatre though. You got to imagine. We hear what Kane Corn says here to create clicks and says stuff he doesn't mean. It's even worse over there.
Calling somebody a clown and they've made a final, and you've basically saying that he's no good and he's the worst. Shows
how they rate. They don't rate the Europa League. So
okay. Anyway, made me scratch my head, and I know you watch a bit more
weird.
soccer than what I do at times, but
it was
I just heard it and just went, are you serious?
Yeah, I just think it was a bit bizarre. It was almost, I think they were trying to get points against each other.
Okay.
A bit as well.
Yeah. Ange sort of brushed it off and went, the guy's a complete tool anyway.
Yeah.
Totally get it. All right, 2-1 for you to Man U and 1-0 for me, so we'll see how we go there. All right, let's move on. SANFL. Mate, a lot happening in the SANFL this week. We'll talk about the SANFLW a little bit later, but the SANFL, this happened obviously 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm still trying to comprehend that North Adelaide sacked Jacob Surgeon mid-season. This hasn't happened for a while.
Because it's not really mid-season still yet. So I don't get it. For mine, it shows they didn't really want him this year. I don't get why they went with him this year. So they're saying for them, the players and that, the writing was on the wall. We can still salvage our season now. And, I just find it weird. For mine, it meant they didn't want him this year, really.
Yep. So. Why appoint him for another year?
I just don't get it. I find it a bit bizarre.
Yep. Absolutely crazy. Hasn't happened for a while, mid-season sacking in the SANFL. Yeah. Normally it's more the off-season. So, anyway, left me scratching my head. South Australia goes down to WN, the state game at the Adelaide Oval, about, an hour before the Port Adelaide-Geelong game. Is it time to move it back to a suburban ground?
Yeah, it should be. I got to admit, I'd do driving the other son to work on Saturday morning, and KG had it at Nord Oval. I thought, oh, shit. I'm working today without me knowing it. Yeah, sort of thing. So I had a laugh there. I did pull over and message in quickly. No, it's not at Nord. It's at Adelaide Oval. Yep. Yes.
But is that a case for, say, and you've talked about it previously, for, say, West Adelaide, who,
very much
maybe a Glenelg, a Norwood, obviously can cater for those conditions?
I couldn't work it out with gather around why we still played it. So they played it out at tonight, but they didn't play it at the new Oval. I just didn't quite. I couldn't work that out.
Yep.
And I thought it should have been at Richmond. Now look, all for state football reward the players. I've got no problem with that.
Yes.
I think they have too many people who hang on for it. In terms of not playing wise. I'm talking staff there.
Yep.
And I've never thought. I've always laughed where it says, therefore our league's better.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always thought that's a bit of a bizarre reaction.
Yep.
Yeah, I respect it for the players, but I only have a glimpse that way, and all I do generally just hope that Nord guys don't get in. They're just hoping no injuries. Especially Nord, but in general.
Yep. It's important for representation, obviously, for the SANFL. But if a potential AFL state of origin comes back, what happens to this concept here? Does it stay as is?
Yeah, well, you could probably play both then at the same venue at the same time, really.
Yep, as a curtain raiser, a proper curtain raiser. This having to be off the Oval an hour before a game.
That's bullshit.
Playing to an empty stadium.
Yeah. What's the point of playing a couple hundred people in a stadium which fits 55,000?
Whereas you can play at 10,000 seat stadium or 8,000 seat
if you
stadium.
played that at Nord, you would have got at least 1,000 people there.
Oh, easily 1,000 people.
I'm just saying, just using that as the bare base worst.
But then supporter groups can all get together and go, hey, cheer squad for Centrals, cheer squad for Norwood, cheer squad for Glenelg. Hey, let's all get together and really make this.
And you could even do it right. Do it at $10 admission,
Yep.
And they're half price. We really want people to come along. There's so many things you could do, and I just thought,
or the clubs themselves. If you buy a season ticket, it automatically
gets you in. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just thought having it at Adelaide Oval was ridiculous. I just don't get it. And it's not saving money because you're employing staff at Adelaide Oval to start 3 hours earlier.
That's right.
So it's not.
Yep.
I thought it was crazy.
Could a revenue share be equalised through the clubs if you were to play it, say, at a Nord or a Glenelg or a West Adelaide?
It's a bit too hard there. It's just catering really there. And
Yep.
I just think you share that around.
Yep.
And why not give West Adelaide a lick of the ice cream?
Yep.
Yep.
Love it, mate. Back to suburban grounds. I still think suburban finals as well for the first couple of finals.
Massively. No, up until the grand final.
Yeah. Be amazing atmosphere, that's for sure, and those smaller grounds. All right, let's move on to netball. Another scrappy contest with the Thunderbirds going down to the West Coast Fever, 61-67.
Yeah, I was watching it. It was on in another TV.
Yes.
That's one good thing about being the Archibald. You can watch a fair few different things.
Yeah, 3 or 4 different sports, that's for sure. Just not quite taking their opportunity.
Yeah, and West Coast just always seem to be had it reasonably in control reasonably early.
Yep. Mate, it like any sport, winning a three-peat or winning 3 premierships in a row is a tough ask, even for netball, especially with the shortened amount of games in their season. But are they priming themselves a little bit for finals? Is it a bit like the Port Adelaide of yesteryear where they just sort of get themselves in a position, but as soon as September rolled around, they were ready and raring to go?
Maybe, but they've got to win enough to make it first.
Yep. We won't do tips this week. I've not got that up on my screen, but best of luck to the Thunderbirds. All right, mate, let's take another quick break. We're running out of time very, very quickly.
Oh, look, I think the other point there...
Just hang on.
Yep.
Coming up, we've got John Cunningham Part 2 on Friday and Keith Thomas Part 1 on Monday.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Sport. We love it and we live it here at INTERSPORT. We are the heart of sport in our local communities. Family owned and operated, supporting local clubs and the community. INTERSPORT has all the latest products from major brands like Nike, Asics and New Balance at the best prices. Come visit us in store and see why we're your trusted sports experts. INTERSPORT, the heart of sport.
Flashbacks.
This is McIntosh, shrugs off the tackle, left foot kick by McIntosh. That's how easy it is on by Platten. Platten as easy as you like. Yeah, those old legs won't do it for him. Brilliant play from South Australia to Anderson.
To represent your state in any sport is fantastic. Your first state game is very, very special to me.
It's an honour to wear the South Australian Guernsey. I was fortunate enough to wear it 15 times in the state of origin. It's an enormous feeling. I think that most blokes, when they play footy, they set goals for themselves during the year, and one of those goals is to play state football.
It's got that tie that you played in state sides together, so I think there's always a mutual friendship. I think there's one thing that I've always thought, that whenever I was going to play in a state game, there's one thing I wanted the other players to remember me by, is respecting me for how I went about playing and playing for them. I think that's the key. I think whether you like or dislike whoever you're actually in battle together, and I think you have to make sure that when you come away from it, they know that you've given your all for them, and if they've given their all for you as well, I think that creates a great feeling.
Over in WA, the grounds are much harder. Guys who take out the field on Sunday will have that endeavour, that mindset to keep running hard, keep working hard, put pressure on them, and hopefully take it out on Sunday.
But just how we celebrate the small things, especially early on in the game, really getting around, the bigger name players, and the bigger name players getting around, the younger players when perhaps the player done something well, or taken a good mark or a good smother. Just the 1%ers. The other things I still remember from that game, everyone was switched on, and that was the difference. Everyone was switched on, and that's something about playing state footy. You go there as a team, you're alongside of some brilliant players and brilliant names, but you still got to do your job. You've got your job to do.
Oh look, they always talk about playing against Western Australia as being a fast game, fast track, and I think that's the one thing we did. We had a pretty fast group. Not me, I was slow as a wet week, but we had a lot of fast players went over there. Obviously, making sure that you get away early to a good start. You've got to be hard early and make sure that you stop that run of theirs and take the crowd out of the play. And it's funny, Western Australia, it's a long way away, so you don't sort of draw that hatred as much. But again, when you play each other, there's a real dislike. Hate's probably not the right word, but dislike, I think, but a healthy respect.
Always really enjoy it. I think that's to be honoured with a state Guernsey and to be a part of a South Australian state side, to be the best in your league, is very much an honour to be a part of it.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, we just looked up that Thunderbirds game for the weekend. They are playing the Mavericks at John Cain Arena Saturday the 25th at 3:30 p.m.
And also, congratulations at Simone McGuinness. McGuinness stepped down as Melbourne Vixens coach, 13 years, a couple of premierships, 3 minor premierships, a couple other grand finals. So she's been an absolute legend in netball.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Congratulations on such a good career. All right, mate, let's move on. Let's talk SANFLW. Nord coach moves on effectively immediately after a pretty tough start to the season.
Yeah, look, all the best to Brad there. It's an interesting one.
And his wife's taking over the role, which, it just, you scratch your head about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, look, all the best. Yeah,
yep.
Leave it at that.
Well done. We've had Alison on the podcast, maybe we might get her on.
I've got a lot of time for Alice.
So we might touch base with her and see if we can get some thoughts on how she might play out the rest of the season as a interim coach. All right, let's move on to the NBA. The Knicks and the Pacers start their conference final tomorrow, and at the moment, the Thunder and Minnesota are currently playing their conference final with Thunder leading 1-0. So we're starting to get to the business end of the NBA.
Minnesota were up at half-time, but got run all over in the second half.
Absolutely crazy. All right, let's talk cricket, mate. I know this is something you've been keeping an eye on, but the IPL is back on, but one noticeable absentee from the Australian player or Australian quick raised a few eyebrows, but not really.
No, I think he was the one with brains, personally.
Yep.
And also, even Jake Fraser McGurk didn't go back too. So, I'm stunned that the others went back, personally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you surprised that it even got started again, or was it because of basically the cricket for both countries that everyone put down the egos and the weapons and said, no, let's just get on with it, and sport's the great leveler, isn't it?
Such a volatile environment over there, though. I wouldn't go back.
Yep.
Personally?
It's going to be interesting. The World Test team announced. We sort of touched base on that a little bit, but big improvement from Cam Green having a pretty good county season at the moment.
Yeah, he's been hot and cold. He's done very well. So he's made another 100. He's made 200s, both against Kent.
Yes.
And a 67 not out to get them home.
Yep.
Their first red ball win since 2022.
Okay.
So big there. So that gets him on a pedestal there. But I think his other 4 innings, his top score was 12. So he's been a bit of both.
Yep.
I think they'll play him.
Does that mean Marnus misses out?
No, I think Marnus will open and Constas misses out. So it'll be Marnus. I think the side will be Marnus, Labuschagne opening with Khawaja, Smith at 3, Green at 4, Head at 5, Webster at 6.
Okay.
I think that's what it'll be. Let's wait and see.
Yep.
I think the other one at the moment, it's going to be interesting, Hazelwood and Boland. Like, Boland's still there and Hazelwood's coming back from yet another injury. Yep. So, that's the other one. For mine, I'd go Boland.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Some big calls that really need to be made. I suppose if you want to win it, you put your best starting 11 out there, don't you?
Yeah, I think at the moment they're in limbo. I don't think they know what their best are, and I don't think there is an obvious one.
Is that because of the lack of cricket at the moment, apart from the IPL?
Yeah, but I just don't think there's been no opening batsmen have really put their thing down on Shield cricket and said, pick me.
Yep.
Everyone's been a bit hot and cold in that regard. Yep. So there's no opener there. I think they want to play They want to play Green.
Yep.
And they love Cam Green.
Yep.
I admit I've got a bet. Timmy G doesn't think he'll get picked. I'm very confident I'll get up on that one.
There you go.
So, yes.
Look forward to
I
hearing
might have
about
a bet with a little fella last week on that one.
All right, some one topic to finish us off tonight, mate, is in golf. Rory McIlroy coming to the Australian Open, signed a 2-year agreement to come down under, and that's great for the sport of golf.
Oh, it's huge. But how about the PGA there where the Simon Scheffler, I was making sure I got the correct.
Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, so he wins. Yeah, Scotty Scheffler, sorry. He wins by 5 shots. Now, that's a huge win again in a championship.
Yep.
It's his second win in a row. He's on fire at the moment.
Yep. Good to see some international players coming down under and playing in the Australian Open. We know that they all come down for the Live. That's more of an event. Even, don't get me wrong, and don't everybody jump on board saying that the Australian Open is not an event, but it doesn't have, it has the prestigious, if you're trying to gain momentum with that, it's important to have these top players come on down. So well done to Golf Australia there, and obviously the Victorian government, I think, were involved with that as well. Mate, quick good, the bad, the ugly for the week.
The good, I'm going to go one out of left field, and it's not really sports so much, but Rotary helped sponsor youngsters to go and do the one and all from various upbringings, and a young fella from overseas time and that spoke brilliantly, and it was a pleasure to be there to hear him and to encourage, because he was very nervous. First ever time he'd spoken.
Yep.
Kept saying, just keep going, young fella. Back yourself in here.
Yep.
Everyone's loving your honesty and your enthusiasm.
Yep.
Because he was worried his English wasn't good enough and all that. But, yeah, it was...
Everyone bought in.
Yeah, and his dad came over and said, thank you for helping him and trying to, and that there. And, yeah, so that was probably the good the good environment of the week probably there. Look, sporting-wise, I like Gold Coast. I've got a bit of thing with Gold Coast and just there. A couple of players like Walter and Lombard I'm following. And, yeah, so looking forward and it'd be good to see someone different be around the market as well.
Absolutely. My good is the Indigenous round, mate. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think we saw that up in the top end for the last 2 weeks. And we saw, a lot of youngsters and the players, I think, giving back after the game, not necessarily going into their hibernation and doing nothing. They were out basically signing autographs and being involved, and that's part of that in community
Well, I think
engagement.
the Dreamtime game should be in Darwin.
Yes.
That 1 year where they had it up there in COVID was fantastic, and that's where it should be.
Yep.
Don't worry about the 83rd. That's where it should be, honouring the Indigenous, main culture and show them respect.
And the viewership would be huge as well. Exactly right. All right, mate, we better wind things up there. We've gone well and truly over time tonight. Thank you once again for your time. Like, rate, subscribe, and basically share any of this podcast to friends, family, foes, teammates, opposition players. Have a bit of a chat on the footy ground with each other while the ball's down the other end as well during the season. Thank you. And once again, we've got to do better next week, and we will. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.